Chapter 26, Port of London, England, 1695. Alice pushed Marci down, the damp, rough wood scraping her hands as she braced her fall, a frosty wind burning her lungs. It was early evening, and a sheet of fog hung over the water. The unfamiliar sounds of traffic from ships and men hummed in the salty air, mixed with a blend of different languages, the rolling tides, and the cries of gulls darting down into the choppy waves for their dinner. A mossy glint of green climbed from the dingy water of the Thames to devour the planks of the decrepit pier. Wooden frigates and low-riding mercantile sloops bobbed on the horizon, their lanterns flashing like fireflies as the sun slipped further down behind the sea. Marci struggled to a sitting position, fretting with the ties at her ankles as Alice stood over her, a look of wry pity on her face, and a growing fatigue Marci noticed for the first time behind her lined green eyes. Alice pulled the rag from Marci's mouth, tossing it aside, then squatted down, pulling her switchblade from its holster. "You don't have to do this, Alice." Marci flinched, peering around in the low light to get her bearings, to find any place to flee. Alice frowned as she cut the ties at Marci's ankles. "I know that, and that is why I'm not going to kill you. But Jim can't find out. He can never know. And once I leave you here, you may wish I had." With that, she sat back on her haunches. "I'm sorry, Marci. I don't like doing this, but I have to. We have to stay one step ahead of the bad guys." "Who are the bad guys? What's happening, Alice? Tell me how I can help," Marci pleaded. Alice shook her head. "Don't. You can't. This all started so long ago I can't even begin to explain. Just go before I change my mind." For a moment, Alice had a crystal-clear memory of standing on the beautifully sculpted lawn of her ancestral home, her father smiling down at her, all long gone. Marci shivered, gazing forlornly about the rapidly darkening docks with a pathetic shrug. "Go where, Alice? Where am I?" "This is the best I can do, Marci. Good luck." Alice stood, glancing down at her watch and taking several steps back from Marci before she silently disappeared. Boom. Whoosh. "Well, this is just fucking great," Marci mumbled, climbing to her feet while taking a moment to orient herself on the creaking, swaying dock before tentatively picking her way to a foreboding wharf, realizing she had no way of ascertaining where or when she was, or even if this were the correct universe for all she knew right now with the Sanders. The only fact left to her with any certainty, one that her neighbors sucked even worse than she'd thought. And that was saying something. Two seedy-looking sailor types brushed past her as she made her way dockside in the twilight, the second glancing down at her flip-flop-clad feet before spitting alarmingly close to Marci's exposed toes, growling, "Fuck off, mate!" pushing her aside and, in the process, almost casting her into the choppy waves below the slippery planks. "Excuse me," Marci barked in her best entitled white male voice to the next likely passerby, his peg leg slowing his progression past. "Could you tell me where I am? I'm afraid I've had too much to drink today, and I'm lost." Dragging his nails through his greasy gray hair and beard, the man leered down at her to expose a row of rotting teeth, his fetid breath washing over her as he rasped, "I don't speak French, lad. Pities to you. Out of me way, you little cocksucker." As with many of her previous travels, no one seemed to pay Marci much attention as she picked her way unmolested through the small, cloistered and stacked streets of early 17th century London. The air was brisk, Marci realized as the shock wore off, glancing down at her dowdy sweatpants, her thin graphic t-shirt, her pink flip-flops, and knew a moment of fear. No purse, no phone, no internet to ask for help. She had nothing but her wits and her charm, which were small solace, and a rarely explored proclivity for shoplifting and anarchy. Within 2 hours, Marci had procured suitable clothing for herself, with some light breaking and entering, and the petty theft of some poor, slight lad's everyday wear from an unoccupied shanty, consisting of flea-infested leggings, a rough cambric shirt, and a lice-riddled hat. Itchy and hungry in her pauper's rags and flip-flops, with only her nimble fingers and comparatively advanced brain power, Marci fell in with a vicious international gang of orphan street urchins who thought she was a pubescent French peer. Yet despite the language barrier, these dirty boys welcomed her into their thieving ranks. Henry, the de facto leader at the grand age of 14, threw his stringy arm around Marci's shoulders when he introduced his new pal to the gang, announcing, "Oi, oi, hey boyos, this is our new pal Marcel. He's a Frenchie, but he's good stock. I spied him in action, nicking a sausage. He's gonna work with us now. He's one of us. He don't speak English, but he's got quick hands. And that's all we need, right?" The other boys cheered, crowding around Marci in their threadbare rags and bare feet, to pat her on the shoulder while simultaneously patting her down to see if she had anything worth stealing. Her flip-flops were still in play and seemed to fascinate her new associates, though the urchins wrote off this oddity as a product of her Frenchified ways. Marci tried to correct them, first Henry, then the entire gang, enunciating repeatedly, "Marci, Marci," when they called her Marcel, adding dolefully, "I speak English." "Wah, wah," Henry lampooned, speaking nonsense in a lyrical tone he felt imitated Marcel's accent. "Oh, wah, wee wee poo poo," as the group howled with laughter. It would never get old for them. After a week of picking pockets across the dirty, crowded city and sleeping underneath stolen flour bags on the dock in a pile, Marci finally began to make herself understood, shedding a bit of her Texas accent and an over-reliance on pop culture references. They thought she was learning English quickly. Yet despite her continued miseries, Marci secretly enjoyed certain more liberating aspects of her new life abroad, as she liked to call it. Small freedoms such as waking with the rising sun, peeing outside, whenever and wherever one pleased, and the novel concept of taking what you wanted when you wanted, so long as you shared that loot with your mates. It felt good to belong. Terrified of being discovered by the Sanders, Marci kept her head down and did her best to earn her keep and blend in, having no time to think of how she might ever return home. And so for now, Marcel stayed put. Or, as Henry would say, "Woody woo, poo poo, de tu la 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 poi poi."